I've been so busy lately. I've just published a new class on Skillshare, and I'm also in the process of fixing up one of our spare bedrooms to use as a painting room. My hubby and I have been painting walls and doors, and I've been buying new curtains and other stuff so that I can make it a really nice space to paint in. I'm videoing the whole process and I can't wait to share it with you. In the meantime, I've finished a new painting. I've just painted this iris in my art journal and I thought you might like to see it. This is the reference photo of the iris that I'll be using. I took this photo a few years ago when I was visiting a garden down in the Hunter Valley of New South Wales. I've got my drawing ready in my book and I've just put some tape along the bottom edge here just so that I get a nice straight edge along the bottom of the iris. The first thing I want to do is get a light purple wash on the petals of the iris. So I'm just wetting this one here with some water. I like to prime my paper with some water first, just to allow the pigment to penetrate into the paper. And this allows me to apply successive layers of paint without disturbing the wash that's underneath. I'm using watery Winsor Violet on the damp paper here. Now I'm just wetting the rest of the petal with some water. And now some more watery Winsor Violet. And while that paint's still damp, I can drop in some Ultramarine Blue just to add interest to the petal. And I just put it wherever I like. And then I just continue on in the same way. I wet the petal first with some water and then I just paint on the watery Winsor Violet. And then I drop in some Ultramarine Blue while the paint's still damp. Just dropping in the blue now. Now I've dried the whole flower off and I've just re-wet this area under where I'm working at the moment with some water. And this is Winsor Violet again, but I've got more pigment on my brush this time, so it's a lot darker. And this is the Ultramarine Blue again that I'm just dropping onto the damp paper. And I've done the same thing over here. I'm painting on damp paper again. And I'm just pulling some of that Winsor Violet down onto the dry section of the petal. Now the paper's still damp here. And I'm just putting some more pigment just on the edge here. I've got lots and lots of pigment here on my brush. I'm just running it along the edge. And this is some of the Ultramarine Blue again, just deepening the colour. Now I've dried it off with the hairdryer and I'm painting on dry paper now. I'm just using my liner brush and watery Winsor Violet. I'm just painting on those lines that I see on the petal. All the paints and brushes that I'm using I've listed in the description of the video. And I just do the same thing on this other side. So this is the Winsor Violet and I'm just painting on dry paper with my liner brush. Now I'm just dampening the paper up here on this petal. I just want to deepen the colour at the base. So this is Winsor Violet again, but I've got lots of pigment on my brush. I'll just take it up the side there softly as well. Now I've actually dried it off with the hairdryer and I'm painting on dry paper now, just with some watery Winsor Violet again. A little bit deeper now so I've got more pigment. And then I do the same thing on this other side. So I've dampened the paper here and this is some Winsor Violet and now some Ultramarine Blue. Now I can see in the reference photo there's a little bit of yellow that's reflected onto these petals above. So I'm just painting that in some watery Winsor Lemon. Back to these markings now. This is the watery Winsor Violet that I'm just painting on to dry paper. Just take it around onto the other petal as well. And now I'm just painting the dark area that I see on the reference photo. So I've got a lot of pigment on my brush here. I'm painting on dry paper. And then I'm just going to drop in some of the Ultramarine Blue as well while the paint's still wet. Now I've got some Winsor Lemon on my brush and I'm just painting in the yellow marking. Just painting this on dry paper. Got a fair amount of pigment on my brush. And now I've got some gold ochre and I'm just painting this onto the damp paint. Over here there's a darker area on the iris, so this is just some more Winsor Violet, and I'm painting this on dry paper as well. And there's a darker area up here. Again, this is Winsor Violet that I'm painting on the dry paper. There's a small darker area on the petal here, so I'm just putting some water on the paper at the moment. I want to work on damp paper here because I want this darker area to have no hard edges on it. I just want soft edges on the paint. And now I'm just deepening the colour on some of those lines on the petals. Just painting on dry paper again here. Okay, so here I'm painting on damp paper and I'm just running some Winsor Violet along the edge of the petal, and I just want it to bleed up to the other edge. So the dark paint goes along the bottom edge and it just bleeds up softly onto that area. And while that's still wet, I can just deepen the colour down at the base here. Now I've got some Winsor Lemon on my brush and I'm just painting in the yellow markings. And I'm painting on dry paper here. And there's another marking over here. A little bit of fine, delicate work with my liner brush now. Painting on dry paper with the Winsor Violet. I'm just running it along between the petals, just to create a darker area there. So I'm just going to speed this area up now, and where I'm working at the moment, I've dampened the paper with some water. And I'm using some pale Winsor Violet and I'm just painting those markings on. Now I'm deepening the colour, so I've picked up some more pigment and I'm just painting over those lighter areas. I still want to see some of those lighter areas, I don't want to completely cover them. A little bit more water now, and now I've got lots of pigment on my brush. And I'm just darkening the colour there on the side. And now I've only got water on my brush and I can move that paint where I want it. Over here I'm just dampening the side of the petal, just with some water. And then I can paint really pale Winsor Violet just over the top to create those markings. And that just keeps the lines soft and fuzzy. I come in a little bit darker now with some more pigment. So now I've got more pigment on my brush and the paper's still damp here. Back over to this side of the petal, I'm painting on dry paper at the moment, just with some more Winsor Violet. And now while that paint's still wet, I can come in with a bit darker pigment and just deepen sections of it. And then I can pull that paint down onto the dry paper just to create those markings there. I've just painted the Winsor Violet here, and now I'm putting on some Ultramarine Blue, just painting on dry paper. Switching back over to the other side now, and again I'm painting on dry paper here just with the Winsor Violet. I'm just painting the cast shadow in that's there. And now I've got more pigment on my brush, and I'm just deepening the colour. So just painting onto the damp paint here. And then I can just reinforce these markings down the bottom here and paint the little turn back. So just deepening the colour slightly. I've just painted this little section in up here, and I'm doing the same thing just by putting some darker pigment just onto the damp paint. And I've dampened this lighter area on the side, and I'm using the Winsor Violet just to paint the lines there on the damp paper. And I've done the same thing here. Moving over onto this one, and I'm just painting again on dry paper here with the Winsor Violet. Just filling in that area. And then I'll come back in with some more pigment and I'll deepen some of it. So now I've got lots of dark pigment on my brush, and I'm just painting onto that damp underlayer. And you can see that the paint is quite dark here. So I've got lots of pigment on my brush. And here it is from above. Okay, so I'm just speeding this section up again. I've just wet this area with some water so the paper's damp. I've got lots of pigment, but now I've washed the pigment out of my brush and I've just got a wet brush. It's just wet with water, and I can just spread that pigment out up the petal. And then while that paper's damp, I can just use my brush just to pull a few streaks of the Winsor Violet down. And I'm doing the same thing here. I'm painting on damp paper. I've just done the same thing on this petal. I wet it first with water, and now I'm just painting it with the Winsor Violet again. And now I've got a lot more pigment on my brush, and I'm just deepening the colour along the edges. So I'm painting on damp paper here with lots and lots of pigment. And just pulling those streaks down over the damp paper. Okay, so I'm just going to speed it up again here, and I'm painting on dry paper now, and there's a cast shadow on this petal here that I'm just painting in, just with the Winsor Violet. A bit deeper now so there's more pigment, and then I just pull those streaks down. I'll do the same thing here. So I'm just painting on dry paper. And down lower here at the base of the petal there's a cast shadow. So this is Winsor Violet, and now I'm just going to drop in some Ultramarine Blue. Okay, so now I'm going to move down onto the stem and the leaves. Now I've wet the stem with some water, and I'm using permanent Sap Green now just to paint a wash over the top. And now I'm dropping in some Winsor Lemon just to blend with the green. And then I paint the next section the same way, just with a little bit of water first, and then the permanent Sap Green. And the leaves I can just paint on dry paper, just with a wash of permanent Sap Green. keep the colour really light at first because I know I'm going to be layering other colours over the top. Now I've dried it all off with the hairdryer and I'm just starting to deepen the colour. So I've dampened this area here with some water and now I'm just painting darker sap green over the top. So I've just got more pigment mixed into the water. Now while that's still damp, I've got some Perylene Green on my brush now and I'm deepening the colour. I still want to see the sap green that I just painted, so I'm not completely covering the sap green with the Perylene Green. And there it is from above. I've just given this leaf here another layer of permanent sap green and now I'm painting on some Perylene Green just to deepen the base. And I'm putting a little bit of gold ochre up the top there on the tip. Some more sap green on this one. And down here I'm painting Perylene Green on damp paper. And I want it to be darker up near the flower and just have it fade away as it moves away from the flower. Some sap green on this one. This is damp paper here. And some more sap green down here as well. And again, I've dampened the paper slightly. Now I've just got water on my brush because I want it to be lighter in colour at the base. And I can pull a few streaks of paint down just to create those little lines there. And there's my finished painting. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my tutorials. And be sure to share this video with your painting friends. This is the third painting that I've done in my art journal. I've also published a tutorial on this orchid. And I've also published a tutorial on this little fairy wren. So thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.